welcome to a new episode of the Woollentwine Fiber Studio Knitting Podcast. My name is Jule and I'm the dyer and maker behind Woollentwine Fiber Studio, which is a small creative space located here in northern Germany, where I play with botanical dyes and natural yarns. Welcome back to a new preview episode here today. I'm very happy that you're here and found your way to this little video where I hope to show you some of the new yarn that will be coming in the January collection. This is the first collection of the year of 2025 and I'm really excited to have a really big collection for this month. But yeah, for those of you who are new here, I like to preview my yarn and what will be available in this moving form, just because it's much easier to see the colors that way, because with natural dyes, it can be tricky to photograph them. So I feel like in movement and in this video format, it's a bit easier to showcase them. And that's what I'm doing today. For those of you who are just starting to follow along, I dye all of my yarns with natural botanical dyes, and all of the things that I'm going to show will be available in a big shop update launch kind of thing. And oftentimes it's the case that this is more like not really colorways that will be staying for a long time, but because of the nature of natural dyes, it's hard to repeat colorways in a really consistent manner. So if there is something you like, it's advisable to purchase it in the dedicated collection. But without further ado, let me give you a bit of an overview of what's coming for the January collection. Not only do we have a lot of colorways dyed, but we're also introducing a new yarn base that I'm incredibly excited about, because this has been on my needles and about to be launched for a really long time, but for some reason I kind of postponed the launch a couple of times just because the timing wasn't right. And sometimes, I don't know if that makes me a bad businesswoman or whatever, but sometimes I just have to go with the flow and with how my creativity strikes. So yeah, sometimes it's just that I have to follow my intuition and then shuffle some plans around. And yeah, but the good thing about this is that due to the fact that it took a bit longer to actually release this base, there are some more samples that I can show you so you can actually envision how it looks like. So yeah, this update is going to be very special because we are going to release the new base. That is, by the way, called Pathway DK. And then we'll also have a restock of our ovis sock base, which has been incredibly loved over the past couple of weeks. So we're actually completely out of stock currently, and I'm happy to bring it back. This is also a custom spun, non-superwash and plastic-free sock yarn for those of you who are maybe new to naturally dyed yarn, or in general, more sustainable natural yarns. This is a great alternative, or not alternative, a great way to maybe double into it and try, because you just need one skein for a pair of socks. And lastly, we will have the very, very last batch of our roots base, this time in the aran weight. We had the last batches of the 4-play and DK weight later in 2024. And this time we're going to have the very, very last batch of Roots Aran, which is also unfortunately very, very small. So yeah, in case you're interested in that base, I'm going to go more into detail later on, but just to give you an overview, now is the time to get it. So without further ado, I will present the colorways and a bit of a base overview for each base to you. First of all, let me introduce to you our new base that we are going to have. And usually I used to do these kind of previews in a dedicated video. However, in this case, I want to have it in the January preview, just because this one is a limited edition, and apart from the batch that we're launching now, there is only one second batch that I can launch, and then it's gone, and I won't restock it again. So this is just going to be a short, hopefully kind of short preview to this new base, and I'm incredibly excited about it. So without further ado, this is Pathway DK, and the name is actually inspired by its kind of traceability. This yarn is a DK weight yarn that is actually fully traceable back to farm. So I know exactly what farms the fleeces are from, which is incredibly exciting for me, and I'm just very happy to be able to offer it. So it is a two-play construction, so it has two threads plied together, and it is a DK weight of 245 meters per 100 grams. So yeah, it's more on the slightly lighter DK side, and I would say the gauge swatch is like 20 to 22 stitches, depending on your tension. But the great thing about this is the traceability, and I'm incredibly happy because while I already pay a lot of attention to how I source the fleeces for my yarns and how to get them, it oftentimes is difficult to trace them back to the exact farm they come from, just because of the nature that some farms are just not large enough to actually have single flock spins. They don't meet the minimum spin runs of the mills, or it's also a lot of work to actually directly sell the fleeces. So in many cases, it's the case that there is some kind of a broker that actually collects a lot of fleeces from a certain region, or certain breed especially. Then they are graded and they are kind of sold in certain units that are applicable for the industry. At least that's how it is the case for most of my productions. And yeah, with this one, it's actually possible to fully trace it back to the farms these fleeces are from. It's not one farm, it's several, but it's just a handful. I believe it's 6 farms that this yarn is coming from, and they are all in the Somerset region of the UK. So this is pretty exciting. And due to the nature of its traceability, we also did not have this yarn as a certain breed yarn, but it's the main composition of it is Romney and a Romney Crossbreed, and there is also a little bit of a Dorset Crossbreed in there, and even a tiny bit of Shetland, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so this can be traced back to the farm. I do know the people who are, you know, taking care of the sheep who made this yarn, and it's incredibly special because of that. And not only is the story super special, by the way, that's also why I called it Pathway, just because I know its exact journey it has traveled and its path from the sheep to the dyed skein, which is something incredibly special. So not only is the story super nice and it takes, you know, the term sustainability to a next level for me in this case, but it's also a very lovely yarn quality-wise. I mean, this kind of also should be an important factor, I guess, when you're making a yarn. At least that is for me. And I didn't have to compromise quality for the sustainability factor in this one at all. It's a beautiful yarn. So let me explain it to you a little bit. It is, it has a little bit of a sheen. I don't know if you can see that, but it has actually quite a bit of a sheen. It's quite lustrous. And at the same time, it has a nice drape, which I think is always nice to see in a skein. So let me just drop it here. So it has a bit of a drape, but not too much. It's also quite bouncy, I would say. So it really bounces back into shape. I realized when I was blocking one of the samples that it was really, yeah, it had bounced back into shape when it dried. So I guess this is a yarn that's very suitable also for larger garments where you would need a little bit of drape, but still something that would not loosen too much over time. At least that's my opinion on this. And yeah, I'm just incredibly happy with how it turned out. It's also like its grip is pretty bouncy and woolly, but at the same time, I would say personally, and you know, this is kind of a very individual thing. I say this a couple of times on my channel, but it's very soft. So I don't find this irritating at all. But of course, this is a very individual thing. Like I sound like a broken record probably, but softness and how we experience a yarn is a very individual thing. And just because I experience this as very soft doesn't mean it is soft to you if you are more sensitive, for example. So I very often get this question via emails, which is the softest of your bases? How soft is base XYZ? And that is something I just can't tell. I kind of refuse to answer this question because it doesn't make sense if I say this is soft and it's not soft to you. So I would say this is not irritating just because it doesn't have a ton of like prickly hairs sticking out. So that is one thing that I can technically say about the softness factor. However, if you're concerned whether you can handle it and whether it feels soft to you, you're welcome to email me with some examples that you've been working with in the past from other, you know, maybe well-known companies, because in that case, I can kind of give you a comparison of the handles. That makes it a lot easier for me to at least give you an idea if you're unsure. So I'm not going to answer the question if it's soft, but I'm going to answer, you know, if I have some kind of comparison yarn that I can, you know, relate it to, then I gladly help with that for sure. So you can always email me. I will put my email down below. And but in general, I would say it's one of our softest yarns that we had in the lineup so far. Without being too drapey though, like it's not sleeky soft. It's more like plump and bouncy soft, if that makes sense. So yeah, and I think it also is very, very lovely in how it blocks. Like I will show you some samples in a second, but what I really liked about it is that despite it being a 2-ply, so it's not a necessarily super round thread in the end, just because the 2 plies are pretty visible. I don't know if you can see. It still blooms and blocks out very cohesively in a sense. And so even if you're working a heavily textured garment, it really like fills in the gaps and helps with texture quite a bit. At least that was my experience. I have not tried a colorwork sample in this. However, I would assume from how it blocked, I would assume that this is also going to be beautiful in a colorwork. So let me share my first sample with you. So I unfortunately kind of lost my swatches. So I'm terribly sorry, but you will have to kind of work with the samples I have here. As said, the gauge swatch would be something between a 20 and 22 stitches, though maybe closer to 20 to 21 if you have a pretty standard tension. And I worked this one on a 4mm needle, and I think it could even be done on like a 3.5, 3.75 easily, up to a 4.5. At least that would be my comfort zone in fabric density. However, it's pretty versatile and it blocks, even though it's a worsted spun yarn, which I don't know how deep I should go into detail about this, but they tend to bloom a little bit less than woolen spun yarns, but this one still, I feel, blooms relatively much, considering this is a worsted spun yarn. But without further rambles, let me show you one of my samples. So it's finally done. If you have been following along on Instagram, you might know that I have been working on this for the past 3 weeks, I believe. And the finishing was a little bit hectic, but I'm very happy to be able to show it to you now. So this is my folklore cardigan by Amy Gunderson. And it's a beautiful classic cabled cardigan. It's very boxy, very oversized. It has cables all over. So it's also cabled. I'm going to show the back because that's exceptionally pretty. So this is the back. And I'm going to also try to insert some clips of me wearing this in a second. So yeah, this is the folklore cardigan, and I decided to choose this pattern because I was really inspired when I saw the yarn in a skein. I was like, I'm kind of feeling a vintage cable, kind of 90s flannel shirts vibe. I don't know, sometimes my brain works this way, that I have a certain idea that is very clear in my head for a second, and then I kind of want to turn it into reality. This is how my brain just works. But yeah, so I kind of envisioned a very classic cabled unisex type of cardigan, and this is just perfect for what it was. I will say, I'm not sure if I can 100% recommend the pattern because it had some flaws. It might also just be me, but I did a couple of modifications in order to be right for me. But in general, I think the overall outcome is definitely beautiful. And I also had fun knitting this, and that's the most important thing, isn't it? I love how I'm like below the sleeves. Hello. So yeah, it was very enjoyable to knit. I also just love the back panel. I think it's really pretty. And yeah, I'm just very pleased with how it turned out. I chose a tubular cast on for all of the edges and even for the actual, for the button band. So yeah, I did the effort of doing a tubular binder for the button band, but I just feel like it gives the perfect finishing to this. And here you can also see how drapey our Pathway DK base is. It has a nice drape, but it also bounces back into shape, as you can see. So even though this is quite oversized, I believe it's going to hold its shape very well. I made size 5, and it's relatively oversized for me. It's meant to be, like the whole pattern, I think, is meant to be pretty oversized. But yeah, I think I could have even gone down a size. However, I actually like it this way, and apparently my partner had an eye on it, and now he can wear it too. It's definitely gonna fit him too. So the cable pattern is also going down the sleeves, or like the diamond and cables kind of pattern. And these diamonds are what really makes this so classic for me, just because I feel like, I don't know, I just have a very fond memory of a sweater that my mum once made for my dad, I think end 80s, early 90s. And it's this type of like relatively many cables, but also some more stitch and then some of the diamonds. You know, this kind of gave me the vibes that I was going for. And so, yeah, this is how it turned out. I will say this is not knitted in one piece. It's seamed. However, for me, this was a pretty practical project because it was portable. Well, the back piece was pretty large in the end, I will say so, but especially while I was knitting the sleeves and the fronts, it was very portable for me, and that was quite nice because I'm traveling back and forth to the studio and then back home, so it's always, yeah, it's always quite a bit to carry around, and so I wanted to make sure that I have something portable with me. So this is how it turned out, and I'm just incredibly, incredibly happy. So yeah, my folklore cardigan. I will make sure to set up a Ravelry project where I add my modifications. They are not a ton. In some cases, I felt like the pattern lacked some neatness, if it makes sense. And since I'm sometimes a bit crazy about my samples being very neat, I decided to change up a couple of things and, you know, try to improve things here and there. However, that's just me. I'm not like, I don't want to be blaming anyone. It's just that, yeah, I might want to say that it requires some experience, the pattern, because it's not like super detailed, and some of the things are not super exactly written. So yeah, this is it, and I can't wait to wear this. Like, it's now that the buttons are on it. By the way, the buttons I bought at the Barcelona Knits Festival, and I kind of had this pattern in mind at the time already. So yeah, I'm happy that they actually turn out as the perfect fit for the cardigan. So yeah, this is my folklore, and I'm very, very happy. Oh, by the way, I left out the stripes because apparently the pattern originally is inspired by Taylor Swift's music video, and so it actually features the stripes, the colored stripes. Usually I left them out because I wanted it to be pure white or creamy color, and yeah, that's why I left it out. I think this way it also shows the color of Pathway quite well, because it's not a pure white, but it's also not an extremely yellowy creamy type, so it's kind of neutral but on the warm creamy side. So for me, this is the perfect kind of cream. I don't like when they're too yellow, to be honest, so this one is just warm but not too yellow, if I'm making any sense. However, I have another sample, and this one was kind of inspired by the idea that, or by something I've noticed, and that is that I feel a lot of, there are a lot of new releases currently where there is a bit of a heavier or like larger needle size used. And since this is more on the like lighter DK weight side, I would probably say sweet spot is 3.75 to 4 millimeter needles for this. I also wanted to have an option for a slightly larger needle. So we have a second sample, and I'm very, very happy that my mom knit this for me because I could not have handled another big sample for this, but luckily we now have one. And this is the Antiope sweater by Sari Nordlund, and it's from her book Softly, I believe. And this is actually not blocked yet because we weren't sure if it would dry in time for the preview, but I feel like it looks super neat and beautiful anyway. So yeah, this should be okay. I think it's also an all over cabled pullover. The back is also features the same panel as the front, and it kind of follows the same inspiration, but with a little bit more of a modern twist. It's compared to the folklore, which was more of a very, very classic one. This one is a bit more elegant and a bit more modern, I feel. And I just absolutely love it. For this one, we did not use Pathway on its own, but rather with a strand of our cloud silk mohair in the undyed white. So it's these two together. And with this combination, you could easily knit on 4.5 to 5 millimeter needles. This one was worked on a 4.5 millimeter needle. However, you can see that it's a bit more stiff this way, so I think it could have even been knitted on a 5 millimeter needle easily, like fabric wise, I believe. So yeah, this is the Antiope, also knitted in size 5, and it's just so beautiful. I love also how the panel goes down the sleeves. It's just so pretty. You can see that I'm very much into classic cables right now. I hope you can see it in all its glory. So yeah, this is the second sample I have to show. And both, by the way, have used approximately 6 skeins of Pathway DK, and the Antiope also used 4 skeins of the Cloud Silk Mohair in size 5. So yeah, the thing is that I think you could probably get away with like 600 grams on the folklore cardigan. However, it's 610 technically. So yeah, I would maybe recommend getting a safety skein if you want to make this one. I also made it in the full length. If you watched my latest podcast episode that I will link here for you, you might have seen me contemplating about the length and whether I should do it cropped or full length. I went for full length in the end, but mainly because I was too lazy to calculate how many stitch repeats to leave out. So no, but I actually ended up liking the look of, 5 buttons in the lower part of after the V-neck. And so yeah, made the full size, and yeah, it's 610 grams. So yeah, it needs a little more than 6 skeins in that size, but it's also very generously sized. So if you want to go a little smaller, then you would totally be fine with 600 grams of Pathway DK. That being said, since it's a limited edition, I would recommend definitely thinking of getting enough of this yarn if you're interested in it, because yeah, I only have one more batch to launch, but then it's gone. So yeah, we don't have unlimited stock of this, and it's not going to be restocked. And just in case you're not really into the acro creamy white look, I wanted to include a third sample that we created in this yarn, and that is the Horsma beanie by my friend Jenny Ansa of Kote Kotoni. And this is a super pretty, very textured beanie, and it has a triple folded brim, and it's very, very nice. And I wanted to include it to also showcase a smaller project in Pathway DK. It features these beautiful bobbles in the middle, and in general a pretty texture. And what I found very interesting, and it might also give you an idea of the handle, like it really holds its shape so well. I've been wearing this apparently before, but you can see it's not going anywhere. Like it's really going back into shape. And this was knitted on 3.25 millimeter needles, so a little bit on a tighter gauge in order to achieve a tighter hat and a good fitting hat. But yeah, I'm very pleasantly surprised. And also I can wear this without an issue. And I have a very, very sensitive forehead. Like I'm not sensitive anywhere else. Like I can wear a little OP around my neck without an issue. But this part of my forehead is incredibly sensitive. And I'm having a hard time with hats sometimes. But this one was absolutely no issue, and I could wear it without a problem. So it's very nice. It has a super nice fit. It's very lovely. And we made the largest size using just a little bit over 1 skein. So if you're not the largest size, you might probably get away with 1 skein. So just in case you want to try first with a smaller project, this is a good opportunity. So the pattern was originally designed to be part of a liner magazine from, I think, 2 years ago or so, or maybe last year. No, I think it was 2 years ago. But a little birdie told me that there should be an individual copy coming very soon. So stay tuned for that. I'll make sure to link it below as soon as it's released. But yeah, just to give you an idea. All right, enough rambling for now. Let me show you some colorways. So dyeing Pathway was a pretty interesting experience for me. just because I'm so used to my gray and natural bases that I kind of had to relearn how to interpret my colors on a white base. But it was also very rewarding and interesting, and it was a lot of fun for me to also have this kind of new medium for now. And yeah, because I was just having a lot of fun, there are a lot of colorways. So without further ado, let me start showing them to you. So we're not gonna sit here for like 2 hours. So first colorway is this one, and it's called Moonstone. And this is a super light gray with a little bit of a purple undertone. So quite coolish in undertone, but very wearable and very elegant, I feel. So this is Moonstone. Next up we have Mint, and this is just a light bluish undertoned minty green. I think it picks up a tiny bit more warm on camera, but it's more like a pretty neutral, not very warm green. More like a mint, so that's why it's called that way. So this is Mint. Next up we have some yellowy tones, and this one is called Marigold, and it's like a orangey warm yellow. However, it picks up a little bit more orange on camera. I would say it's a bit more golden in real life. Yeah, maybe this depicts it a bit better. So it's like a golden yellow tone that I think is very beautiful and very spring-like already. So next up we have our colorway Antique, and this one we had before on other bases, but I wanted to give it a shot on the white base to see how clear it would come out, and I think it's very beautiful, this kind of antique, almost like brass metal kind of color. Love this one. I made my citrine jumper by Ines of Verdnit in this color but on a different base, and I loved it. So this is Antique. Next up, some more orangey, like warmer shades, and then I'll transition to the more cooler shades maybe. So this one is Pumpkin, and it's almost a classic by now, like a very rusty orange, however not as punchy, like this probably shows it a bit better. So it's a reddish, orangey, rusty type of color that I really love. So this is Pumpkin. Then next up we have a new colorway that I also really love, and I think it's very spring-like. So this one is Watermelon Sugar. Yeah, it might be a little Harry Styles reference over here, but it kind of reminded me of the inside of a watermelon, so I had to, I'm sorry. For those of you who don't know, I have a background in the music industry. So yeah, every now and then I have to do some song-inspired colorway names. Should I do a collection inspired by cool albums and songs? I wonder about this many times a year, so maybe one day. Let me know in the comments what you think. But yeah, this is Watermelon Sugar, and it's like a corally pink. Very nice though. I will keep this here because I have a couple more pinks that I wanted to show to you, so you can actually see them side by side. But first we have another neutral, and this one is Almond, and Almond turns out a lot more saturated on gray bases, but it has this super lovely light washed effect on the white, and it's also a bit more neutral on the white, which I really love. So yeah, I totally love this one. You know how much I love beige if you've been around here for a while, so this one is for me. So yeah, this is Almond, and I think this makes a great base if you want to pair it with another color that might be a bit more punchy, so it gives a good neutral contrast to a lot of shades. Speaking of neutrals that give a nice contrast, we also have this one, and it's called Hickory. And this is like a reddish undertoned brown that I really love. It's a bit more red on camera than it is in real life, I will say though. So I think it's a bit more neutralish even. So this is Hickory. Next up we have Clematis, and this is a saturated, nice but very sophisticated purple. So with a relatively bluish undertone. Quite cool though, I think. So this is Clematis. Should I keep this one? Maybe I should keep it because we have some more pinkish purpley shades. Lastly, or not lastly, but in the kind of neutral brownish category, we have Auburn, and it's funny because some of you might know how super dark it looks on a gray base, and this one is a lot lighter and more like reddish on a white base, which I think is very exciting. So yeah, just very lovely. So this one is Auburn. And now we'll get to the pinks and reds. And since there are a couple of them, I'll try to also hold them up next to each other. This is the first one, and this is called Powder, and it's more of a light bluish pink undertone. Maybe, oh yeah, this way it shows better. It's like a coolish light pink that I think is super pretty. Next up we have Ballerina, and this one is more of like the warm cousin of Powder, and it's more, here you can see them side by side, it's more of a warm pink undertone. So these are the two lighter ones. Next up we have some of the darker pink shades, and this one is called Peony, and it's like a, shows up a bit more saturated pinky on camera, but it's more like a dusty saturated pink. Is it visible even? So this one is Peony, and it might be one of my favorites from the collection. I really like this one because it's kind of Jane Austen movie vibes to me. Then next up we have our kind of almost classic Berry Jam. And I also love how it turned out on the white base. You can also see quite well with the darker dyed shades how much of a luster this yarn has. So this one is Berry Jam. I always recommend referencing when I'm holding it back here because I feel like this is more true to color than this might be, although it's also quite true. So yeah, that's why I'm showing it to you in different angles so you can get an idea. And lastly, also almost a classic is Oxalis, and this is like the more warm and reddish undertoned companion to Berry Jam. So here they are side by side, by the way. So Oxalis is more reddish and Berry Jam is more pinkish purple in undertone. And lastly, I will try to, I don't know how successful I will be with this, but I'll try to hold them up together. So here you can see them side by side. And I'll start on this side over here. We have Powder, Ballerina, Watermelon Sugar, Peony, Oxalis, and Berry Jam. Hope this makes sense. Oh, I should maybe also, like I can't hold it up, but in comparison to Berry Jam, Clematis, just to show the difference in undertone. So Clematis is considerably bluer than Berry Jam is. So yeah, those are the colorways on our Pathway DK base. As mentioned, it's only available in a DK weight base with 245 meters per 100 grams, so we don't have a fingering weight companion to it this time. And that's also because I wanted it to be kind of a wintry collection this time. Like I was envisioning, I mean, we're in the middle of January, so I kind of thought maybe we would have all of the yarns to knit cozy winter jumpers with. At least that was my vision for this, so not sure if it makes any sense, but I was really feeling the vibes, and it was incredibly cold here, so I kind of thought it would be a nice option to have a collection all around sweater jumper yarns, and yeah, that's why this is available in the DK weight only. Speaking of more sweater yarns, let me jump to the next base. All right, for the next part of the video, I wanted to share with you the colorways that we will have on our Roots Aran base. I have a dedicated video about Roots that I'll link here, just so I don't have to repeat everything. But this is also a limited edition base that was actually sourced from local fleeces and spun locally. And I'm super happy that I was able to have this. It's also a woolen spun yarn, which we very rarely have. So I'm happy to have this one last batch. And it also kind of follows the inspiration of having heavier sweater yarns for January and, you know, having the heavier yarns this time that seem to be relatively popular at the moment, I feel. However, I will say this is a very tiny batch that we have left, and once it's gone, it's gone. Like we have, I think, a handful of the 4-ply and DK currently still in the shop. However, this is the very last batch we have of all of the bases of Roots, just because we cannot get it respun. And yeah, so if one of these shades is calling your name, now's the time to get it. So this one is Roots Aran in its undyed state. It is a 200 meter per 100 grams, so it's an Aran / worsted weight yarn, woolen spun, and therefore you can still use it on a relatively wide variety of needle sizes. I like to knit this with a 4.5 millimeter to 5. However, you could probably even go up to 5.5 or whatever might suit you. So yeah, this is an Aran weight yarn, and I will say so much already that at least for the next half a year or so, we don't have any Aran weights planned to have in the shop. So yeah, if that's your dream yarn weight, now might be the chance to get it, just because yeah, it's not something I regularly stock, and so yeah. Roots Aran, 200 meters per 100 grams, pure local Romney wool. It has some dark fleeces blended into, so if you compare it to, for example, Pathway, it's not pure ecru cream white. It's more like a warm gray in undertone. So it also is a 2-ply woolen spun, and it blooms beautifully. So I show this more in depth in the dedicated preview video of the base, but just to give you a bit of a reminder, this is what you can do with it. So this is my Ridge Rib sweater by Manmi Choi of Soap Knits. I will link everything below. But yeah, this is made from the undyed Roots Aran, and yeah, very nice sweater. I had a lot of fun knitting this. It's a super simple, easy to remember textured pattern, and it also has a nice oversized fit, at least on me. Like, I prefer it. And I wanted to share the shoulder detail with you just because it's so pretty. So this is the super nice shoulder detail going in the back of the shoulder. Has a very nice construction. It's a super beautiful sweater, and if I'm not mistaken, I should have a full Ravelry project on this up on my Ravelry page, so you can see yeah, all the details about it. But if I'm not mistaken, I used a 4.5 millimeter needle on this. So yeah, this is my Ridge Rib, and you can also see the drape of Roots here. It is a woolen spun, however, it's not super stiff, so it's still quite, because it has been plied rather loosely, it gives a beautiful drape still. And you can also see his little halo a little bit over here maybe. So yeah, my perfect rustic dream of a sweater. So yeah, I'm actually wearing it a lot currently because it's just very, very cold at the studio. Sometimes we have these old wooden doors and yeah, especially in the very cold days, there is a lot of air flowing in. I should probably get myself one of those wind stoppers that I can lay there. So, but yeah, so I'm making use of my knitwear at the moment. But yeah, this one was knit in the undyed Rhodes Aran. And we have only 6 colorways on this base just because we had such a little batch left. But without further ado, let me share them with you. So this one is almond. It's a warm, beautiful beige on this base, a bit more saturated than on Pathway DK, hence just because of the different undertone. But this one is almond. I decided to include it into the base, into the color range because it's great to combine with other colors. Next up we have probably my favorite. This is maroon and it's a warm kind of glow from within reddish brown. I think it's so nice. I don't know what it is, but on this base it just kicks. It really looks like it glows from within, I feel. Fascinating that plants can make these kind of colors. I'm just happy. So also like the combo of the two, I kind of see a colorwork sweater, just saying. Next up in a kind of similar range, we have pumpkin, and this is similar to maroon, just a bit less brown, more rusty red. Here it is in comparison. So let me share them like this. So pumpkin is significantly more punchy and reddish in undertone than maroon is. So yeah, here are the 3 brownish neutral shades. Next up we have a more reddish pink shade that is called Dahlia, and it looks a bit more orange on camera. I would say it's, yeah, maybe more like this. It's more like a red pink. So this one is Dahlia. Then we have our good old classic Oxalis that is so nice on this base. Like, I love the burgundy touch on this base. Just very pretty. So this is Oxalis. And then we have Olive, which is a saturated yellowy green that I think is super nice. It's almost like a Shrek green. Reminds me of the movie Shrek, kind of. I don't know. On this base, it's more green than it is on my other ones, so that's quite interesting. So, yeah, Shrek green olive. So, yeah, those are the colorways we have on our Rhodes Aran base. It's a bit bittersweet to have it, to see it go. But I'm also quite happy that, you know, it has been loved by so many already, and now we're releasing the last batch, and it kind of feels good to have this in my hands for the last time. But yeah, so far about Rhodes Aran. Let me jump to the very last base that we'll restock in this update. So, while we all need warm sweaters these days in the middle of January, I also believe we can have some toasty feet and should knit ourselves some pairs of socks now while it's so cold. And yeah, I have been getting so many requests about restocking ovis over the past 2 weeks that I was like, okay, I was initially planning on only doing a few colorways, but I was really, you know, trying to make a few more just so you could have more to choose from. Thank you so much for the interest in this yarn. So a little recap. Ovis is our natural non-superwash plastic-free sock yarn. It has a 375 meters per 100 grams and is spun to a slightly higher twist to help with durability in socks. And it has a slightly rustic feel and is super warm on the feet. So yeah, it has been around for a while now, and I'm still, every time I have it in my hands and I dye it, I'm just very, very happy. So I guess that tells some things about how much I love this vase. But yeah, we are going to restock it in its undyed gray state. This is the undyed gray colorway. And we also have a few more colors. And the palette on this vase is kind of inspired by the moody January lights. But we also have a few lighter ones, don't worry. But it's kind of, I kind of was feeling the moodiness of January. So without further ado, let me start with the neutrals. This one is sand, and it's just a light neutral beige, dyed on a gray base, so it has the heathered effect again. So yeah, this one is sand. Next up, might also be my favorite this time, on this base too, maroon, also on this base, which is a beautiful saturated red brown on this base too. And I'm kind of feeling the vibe of, you know, some maroon colored socks to go with some black tights and then the white ecru for a sweater. I don't know, I'm kind of feeling this combo quite a bit with black right now. So yeah, quite excited, and I kind of want to snag a skein for myself, but who knows, maybe. So this is maroon. Next up we have Dahlia, and this is usually, like, sometimes it turns out more pinkish, sometimes it turns out more brick red, and this batch has turned out more on the brick red side, and it's quite interesting. You know, this is also the nature of botanical dyes, is that they are kind of unpredictable, which I sometimes love, I sometimes hate, depending on what I want to go for. But yeah, this batch has turned out a bit more reddish in undertone and less pink. So yeah, it has also been used in Ronja Hakalehto's Tupa socks, alongside also the sand colorway and our Auburn colorway, which I'm not having in stock right now. But yeah, as you can see, this batch has turned out quite a bit more bricky in comparison to the first edition of this. But yeah, this is Dahlia. Then next up we have our colorway Vermilion, and I tried to recreate this. It is an older colorway, but I tried to recreate it with a new batch of dyes that just has a different outcome. So it's a bit more like, it's a red still, but it has more of a blue pink undertone than the original version from some years ago had. However, this is Vermilion, and I think it's quite cool. Next up, we have our classic Oxalis on over sock again. I decided to dye Oxalis on most of our bases this time, just because I've been receiving some requests recently. So yeah, hope you find something that makes you happy. But this is Oxalis. Next up, we also dyed Peony on over sock, so it's a kind of medium pink that's also like more on the warmer side, I would say. Very elegant, very old school, Jane Austen-y again, so kind of loving this one as well. So this one's Peony. Next up, we have our colorway Antique. And here you can see how the undertone does affect the shade quite a bit, just because, yeah, on the Pathway Decay it looked a bit more yellowy, and I think on It has a bit more of a washed greenish undertone on ovis, just because the gray in ovis is a bit more blue and like blue, but cold in undertone, and so quite interesting. So this one's antique, also quite beautiful. I love this one. I kind of feel like this one would be nice as a color work base with some of the warmer tones. I don't know, might just be me, but I just really like the idea. Next up, we have chocolate, and this is a reddish undertoned, relatively dark brown, like a chocolatey brown. Would also make a good contrast color to most of the lighter ones, I think, if you're into colorwork sock knitting. And then lastly, I have these two shades, and they were kind of experiments, and therefore they are only listed as one of a kinds. So this one is the one of a kind number 1. So they will be listed as OOAK in the shop. So OOAK 1 and one of a kind 2. This is a little bit more red in undertone compared to the first one. But I think they're both quite nice. This one is more like a golden undertoned brown, the one of a kind 1. And then this is a bit more reddish, coppery kind of brown, the one of a kind 2. So yes, I think finally we've made it to the end of this list and the end of this video. Let me wrap up the video and give you a little bit of an admin section to let you know when all of this will actually be available. A little admin section at the end. So for this collection, everything you just saw and everything that I just showcased to you, it will be available on the 31st of January at 8 p.m. CET in my shop. I will link the shop down below. And yeah, if you want to be reminded of the shop update going live, you can also sign up for the newsletter, which I would recommend in general, just because we really don't know what's going on in the social media world at the moment, and I think it's the safest way for me to reach you if you're signed up for the newsletter, so I can let you know whenever there is something new. So yeah, that's when the update will go live. I also wanted to share something with you in case you wanted to try Pathway and you're not really sure. You know, you don't want to commit to a larger project. There is a new pattern release, well, kind of re-release because it was in a book before, but there is a pattern that would work well for this. It was originally designed in a discontinued base of ours, that's BFA Massam DK. However, it can easily be adapted gauge-wise for BFA Romney DK and Pathway DK. So you can totally use one skein of Pathway DK for the Flirt, not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the Flirt headband by Neil de Dritz, who's a friend of mine and a knitwear designer from Belgium. And yeah, she made this beautiful brioche headband that actually is going up and down in waves. It's very beautiful. I'll make sure to add a picture here so you can imagine it. And by the time this video goes up, the pattern has just released, and I think she even has an introductory discount at the moment. So if you're fast enough, you might be able to snag it at a discount. And yeah, that's what I wanted to mention, just in case you wanted to try. Oh, this looks like a little cake, kind of. So if you wanted to try Pathway DK with a smaller project, this might be a good idea. Other than that, I will make sure to have a list of suitable patterns that would be working with Pathway DK, and also the same for Roots Aran. I will put them all below. I also have a little thing for ovis sock. However, I always feel like we know what to do with sock yarn, so I'm not keeping that one up to date as much. But yeah, I'll make sure to link the little Ravelry collections for the different bases below, just so you can have a bit of inspiration in case you need it. Yeah, but I think that is it for today's preview. As always, if you have any questions or you're unsure about how much yarn to purchase and need a bit of help, please feel free to email me at hello@woollentwine.com. It's always easiest to reach me via email in launch weeks, just because there is usually a lot going on different channels, and it's easiest for me to keep up with questions via email. It might sometimes be that I don't see Instagram DMs in a busy week. So if you want to make sure that I will see your question, please email me. I always try to reply within 48 hours maximum. So yeah, feel free to send me an email. I'll gladly help with whatever questions there might be. And yeah, it's always, especially with the limited edition yarns, I recommend to reach out prior to the shop update going live, just because we never know how quickly things are going or how things are, it's always easier to be prepared and to know how much you might need, how much you would like to purchase. And so I always recommend checking with me beforehand if you have any questions, just because also after the shop update, it's a lot, like I'm monitoring my emails during the shop update. However, like spontaneous alterations of orders and such sometimes can only be processed quite a bit later, just because it's the weekend after and I'm often quite drained after a launch day and need a bit of time off. So yeah, it might be that I'm not able to alter an order afterwards. So it's always better to be prepared. Okay, welcome to my TED Talk over here. Sorry for the rambles, but yeah, just wanted to make you aware of how to successfully purchase in the shop update. So I guess that is everything for today. Thank you so much for sticking around. This is a pretty long video. I definitely know that already. So I hope you had some knitting at the same time while you listened to my woolly rambles. And until the next episode, I'll say happy knitting and bye.